When Henry II built the massive keep of Dover Castle, he used scores of woodcarvers, masons, and many other skilled craftsmen. It took a great deal of teamwork to build it, and today it takes just as much teamwork to maintain it and display it for people to enjoy. Visitors see the public face of the custodian, but behind him are many other skills and disciplines. They are needed to conserve not just the great national monuments like Dover, but also the smaller historic buildings, monuments, and townscapes, many of which are still lived and worked in. The public body set up by Parliament to do this is English Heritage. The great growth of the leisure industry has meant that heritage in its different forms is now very popular. English Heritage encourages historic reenactments like this one by the Order of the Black Prince. But these are more than just entertainment. They are an introduction which will lead visitors on to learn about the real castle and its history. The heart of Dover is the 12th century keep, the military stronghold of the castle, which also contains the apartments for entertaining the king and all his elaborate court.
Right, this is the Great Armour Hall and was Henry II's upper hall and the main public apartments. It's quite impressive, isn't it? Eh?
Yeah.
A medieval king and his retinue would always be on the move from castle to castle, like a snail without its shell. This castle was a shell, and it had to contain within its walls everything that was needed in both war and peace.
I didn't realise the chapel was still in use.
Yes, it is actually. This chapel is still consecrated. It's been consecrated right from its inception in 1180 when it was built.
Yes.
And is actual fact the lifeline for the whole castle. It's a thread and the only thing that's kept going all this time. If you understand that it takes about 2 hours to look round Dover Castle as a minimum, there's an awful lot to see. If we start at the seaward end, there's Churchill's Lookout, which we hope to have open, and the regional seat of government below, the tunnels in the cliffs below, in 1990 for the anniversary of the Battle of Britain. Coming back inland from that, we've got the Roman lighthouse and the church. A Saxon church is 1,000 years old. 1,000 years old. Next to that's the Roman lighthouse, which is 2,000 years old. And curious enough, a small thing you should know about that, it's the tallest Roman building north of the Alps. Not the largest, the tallest Roman building north of the Alps. And coming inland further again, we've got the actual keep and the building in outstanding. This tremendous building here is 96 foot square, huge great building, one of the largest buildings Morris the engineer built. And it was one of the last ones he built as well. It came after Newcastle and after the Tower of London. So you've got a lot to see, and 2 hours might just about cover it.
Once introduced to history, people are usually eager to learn more. The glossy guidebooks are supported by careful research and reconstructions. The illustrators try to bring alive what the historians and archaeologists have established. The details in the picture being painted here of the medieval Thornholme Priory on Humberside are based firmly on extensive excavations at the site over many years. English heritage aims to make our past accessible at many levels, whether through these popular guidebooks or through more academic books that are also on sale. There are about 400 historic properties which English Heritage manages on behalf of the nation. Not all of them may be as impressive as these, but they cover every period of our history. Remote prehistoric remains, forts, villas and towns of the Roman province, Saxon monuments, as well as Norman and medieval castles of every shape and size, abbeys of the different monastic orders, rare domestic buildings, and great tithe barns, Tudor forts and Georgian houses, as well as industrial monuments of our very recent past. All of them have to be repaired and maintained, and this is a major national task. Repairing the beautiful fortified manor house at Stokesay in Shropshire needed a 3-year programme of work and cost about £500,000. There had to be close cooperation between administrators, historic buildings experts, architects and craftsmen who have carefully followed the medieval skills of stone carving, joinery and tiling. The last phase of work was a complete replacement of the roof tiles on the south tower, although the original timbers are still in a remarkably good condition. Keeping as much of the original fabric as possible, whether wood or stone, has been a priority of the architects during their regular inspections.
Well, Chris, this is the one that we've just finished.
Oh, yes.
You can see we've got about the right balance of new stone to old. The new stone, I think, has fitted in very well. We had a bit of difficulty with the moulding on this one, where the masons didn't quite get it right, but they've been back and had another go at it.
It looks all right now, doesn't it?
Yes, and over there you can see the area where we've done the dentistry repairs.
Yes, they've come off well. They've fitted in very well. And the hood mould is performing very well here.
Yes?
Yes, it's perfectly all right.
That's right. Fine. It's all looking okay, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
That seems to have completed all the outstanding works in this part of the monument, so I can hand it back to you in its completed form.
Good.
So then the building should be open to the public, completely open again before Christmas, which is excellent. And that gives us time to organise things for a relaunch after the repairs for next spring, for the new season. And so I think we start to think now with the presentation officer about an exhibition about the history of the monument, and I think about the conservation of the building.
The skills needed in restoring a house like this means investing in people, the long apprenticeships and the discipline of patient, perfectionist work. English Heritage maintains its own permanent staffs of highly trained craftsmen. They can serve both its own historic properties and those of others, such as the royal palaces. The stone carver's workshop replaces intricate details from the grand historic buildings, as well as classic sculptures whose originals have weathered over time. At the conservation studio, precious paintings and tapestries are restored in painstaking detail. Work like this can often take years. Sometimes, before the precision work can begin, the canvas itself needs attention. Because of the war, this painting has spent 40 years rolled up and has cracked and split. It will have to be completely lined before anything else is done to it. These panels are the work of one of the daughters of George III, and they came from Windsor Castle. Once restored, they will be returned to their original home, Frogmore House in the grounds of the castle. As well as the many properties English Heritage manages directly, there are thousands more historic buildings in other hands. Nearly all of them are legally protected from demolition or disfigurement by listing. But this does not stop them from gradual decay, especially if they remain empty. Repairing and maintaining them is always a costly business. English Heritage pays a major part of its total budget towards repair of the more important buildings, but it is essential that these are occupied and given a viable modern use. The grants can be as little as £5,000 for minor repairs, or up to £1 million, such as the offer made to the magnificent Victorian Ribchester Viaduct in North Yorkshire. But as well as outstanding individual buildings, our historic towns have to be protected against thoughtless developments which could change their whole character, and which we have often regretted when it is too late. Some of our best Georgian and Victorian towns, like Lancaster, face immense pressures. The town plan, for example, is looking for new jobs in manufacturing and services like tourism. That means a heavy demand for office space and industrial sites among its old streets. Of course, we cannot halt development, but it can be done sensitively in harmony with their traditional character and the historic street plan, rather than brutally confronting it and wrecking it. There are over 6,000 conservation areas in England where English heritage administrators, architects and planners work with the local authorities to try and achieve the best solution. Lancaster has a historic quayside, which still has its Georgian custom house. It is flanked by old warehouses, which are now being given a new use. And houses are being built which have been designed in keeping with them. Once again, it takes historic building specialists to liaise with City Council and developers.
Hello, Peter. Nice to see you again. So you've nearly finished?
Yeah,
Finishing
that's right.
touches?
Yeah.
We've just been admiring the pointing. It looks pretty good. When do you expect to finish?
About another month.
Another month. Yeah. And how are you finishing all this off?
It's all been painted dark green.
Dark green?
Yeah.
That was the colour chosen by the City Council, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You had problems with them, I gather.
Yeah, they didn't like the first
Yeah.
shade of green that we painted.
Okay. Can we come in and have a look what's going on?
Welcome, yeah.
Good, thanks very much.
Most historic buildings cannot be museums, but have to be functioning places where the present generation has to live and work. The Moor Lane textile mills in Lancaster, sturdy buildings from the last century, are a good example of successful conversion to office space. The work is supervised locally by the city architect, Charles Wilson.
Well, John, it's very nice to see so much activity going on this mill here, number 2, but the big question for the future must be what happens on mill number 3.
Well, one thing is certain, it is now going to be conserved and reused. And we're actually waiting until we know exactly what we're going to do with and the way we're going to operate Mill 2 that will help us determine how we use Mill 3. But what does seem clear is that the pump priming that's gone in from a variety of sources and English heritage on the first 2 has created the commercial interest on Mill 3, which should ensure that it will go ahead.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that, because that was our objective. I'd only say that when you actually have a user, if you encounter any particular problems and you think a little bit of grant would make the difference, then we're still interested.
Well, of course, and I think one of the important...
Ribchester, on the River Ribble near Preston, was the site of one of the most important Roman forts in the north of England. In the reign of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, it was occupied by a unit of elite Sarmatian cavalry from the Danube region, who could afford superb decorative armor, such as this parade helmet. It was found in the river about 200 years ago, and this is a reproduction from Ribchester Museum. Recent excavations, entirely funded by English heritage, have revealed the main Roman road and the foundations of an even earlier Roman fort. Over in the other corner was a row of industrial buildings and furnaces, which supplied the fort and the townspeople. The dig had to be done because the nearby church of St. Wilfrid's planned to extend the area of the graveyard.
I suppose that one of the problems that we have to face is that this is so close to the line of the graves, but I understand that you wanted to do this urgently so that you can find what happened to the original fort.
That's right. We wanted to get as close in to the site of the original fort as possible. And in fact, we've just about finished this area now. Holes should be filled in very soon, then we'll seed over it. In a few months' time, no one will know that this hole is here.
English heritage places great importance on encouraging visitors to the excavations to learn what is being done and why. To see the actual timber foundations of a Roman factory is a short route to appreciating the excitement and difficulties of archaeology.
Lay a timber foundation like that, and then that can spread the weight around when you put your actual embankment on top of it. So you can imagine a turf wall going like that. So we think the north gate's under the T-hut.
In the case of schools and colleges, its education branch organises special facilities, visits and projects.
You've got all the timber things going along like that. And what we think of that...
In excavations like this, there are often unexpected discoveries, and these can affect the future strategy and, of course, the cost. The dig's director wants to buy more time.
But what's happened is that everything has become incredibly more complex than we ever anticipated from our preliminary work. And for example, we've got here the earlier rampart and multiple phases of defences, which include what we think is the beginnings of a very large timber gate. Now, the gate will help us come to some real judgments about the earlier fort and the occupation outside the fort. And the timbers themselves, of course, are going to be very important. We've had the Ancient Monuments Laboratory up. They've taken spot samples, and we're going to get really good dendrochronological dates.
Yeah, they're certainly going to revolutionise this part of the Roman Empire, aren't they?
It's going to be fabulous. We're going to learn exactly when the Romans first took this part of the northwest under control, which up to now, we really don't know except from the historical sources.
OK, Adrian, how much is it going to cost?
Well, I think we really need to do the job properly and to do it justice, we need to have about 6 months more digging. To be efficient about that, we need to carry that on right the way through without a break. I think we're talking for the additional excavation somewhere in the region of an additional £80,000.
Right. That's a lot of money.
But the dig itself is only the very beginning of the work. The costs don't stop there. Timbers, for example, have to be analysed using precise scientific techniques such as tree ring dating or dendrochronology, to use the scientific term, which can give us a precise date of when they were felled and used in a building. At the Ancient Monuments Laboratory, finds from all over the country are analysed by a team of English heritage scientists. All this information will feed back to the archaeologists and appear when their research is eventually published. England has a great wealth of archaeological sites, many of them in towns and cities where there are heavy developer pressures. They should be preserved below ground if possible. Only if the development has to destroy them is there a need for a rescue excavation. And then the developer should provide the time and money to do the job properly. But the best solution is to survey the underlying remains before a developer is given planning permission, before the bulldozers start work. New technologies are now making this possible. This means that the developer can often design the foundations of his building so that they avoid disturbing the remains. In the countryside, English Heritage tries to cooperate with farmers through management agreements so that they can farm in a way that protects the many ancient sites from being damaged by ploughing, drainage, and other work. Some 60,000 of these monuments will eventually be legally protected. Often there is no reason why proper management can't go hand in hand with a plan to conserve both landscape and wildlife. A register has also been compiled of over 1,000 historic gardens, which reflect the changing tastes in leisure and relaxation over the centuries. After the storm of 1987, nearly £2 million was earmarked in grants for repairing the damage. This is some of the very varied work of English Heritage. But how is the organisation managed? Who, for example, has an overview of all the different properties and the work being done there? The staff of 1,500 administrators and specialists are governed by a commission of some 15 members, chaired by Lord Montague of Beaulieu.
Since we've been here, we've done a great deal to the house, new pictures and new furniture, and now we're trying to concentrate on the grounds a bit because we really want to restore some of the beauty of its 18th century character.
Is the house open all the year round?
The commissioners are appointed by government and include eminent men and women from many fields. As well as taking the major policy decisions, commissioners regularly tour the country to inspect the work of the organisation, such as the restorations here at the fine Georgian Marble Hill house in Twickenham, now being managed by Julius Bryant.
This group of paintings were painted in Rome in 1738 by Giovanni Paolo Panini, and they were painted for this very room, for this house, for Mrs. Howard, the mistress of George II. Here they remained until about 1900, when they were removed by the house's last private owners, William Cunard. And they've been missing ever since. That is, until only recently, when this one was discovered in New York, being sold by a private collector from Philadelphia. And the other two were in the south of France. And they've been purchased and reinstated by English Heritage, and here they will remain, never to escape again.
Professional curators lead a special museums division which manages the historic houses and their precious contents. Their policy is to bring back as much as possible of the original paintings, furniture and fine art objects which have often been removed or sold by previous owners.
Came back unframed. And in fact, the frames that you see today are architects' reproductions based on the old photographs. Now, quite what these pictures meant to visitors to this room, let us imagine ourselves coming in here on a candlelit evening, visiting Mrs. Howard, and Alexander Pope, and Jonathan Swift, the fire on and the mist outside, and the gilding all flickering rather more mysteriously than it is today. What would these pictures have actually meant to people? The architecture, the sculpture?
Overseeing this work is just one of the many functions of the commissioners. They also promote the cause of heritage conservation through Parliament, both in the Commons and the Lords.
Of English historic buildings and monuments. But also importantly, we are the statutory advisors on the heritage matters to the Secretary of State for the Environment. I have to say, therefore, that English heritage were extremely disappointed with the recent decision by the Secretary of State.
Another method is public campaigning in alliance with other committed conservation bodies, and also patient persuasion and negotiation in the corridors of government. But only by involving a wider public will the aims of English heritage and its allies be achieved, because their commitment is to safeguard England's past, something that belongs to all of us.
Yes, by all means, sir. There you go. Okay.
When a family like this one joins English heritage, they're doing more than just buying a season ticket to all the castles and abbeys. They're joining a wider movement for conservation, which will hand on to their descendants much more than they can give on their own.